Welcome back to the Special Education Insights podcast. Today's guest is Gary Weber. He is the Senior Advisor at Nyman Associates, which is part of Point Quest Group. He has spent over a decade leading non-clinical operations and driving systems that support service delivery, which I think is absolutely incredible. He has more than 20 years of experience in business process optimization and technology innovation, which, if you think about it, starting from the 90s and going forward, is really, really impressive. He brings a phenomenal perspective to education that sits at the intersection of systems, data, and efficiency. His work is focused on helping organizations not only better understand their data, but also streamline operations and ultimately improve outcomes, which everybody loves. Gary, thank you so much for spending time with us here today, and welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Lenore. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I am ecstatic. I know you have a strong background in business operations and technology. What drew you into the world of education and therapeutic services? I find that fascinating.
Of course, it will sound as a cliche, yet it's the truth. It's the opportunity to do something much more meaningful, to make an impact, and to be so close to people who are actually making changes in our kids' lives and our patients' lives.
Absolutely. That is amazing. Now, I know you worked across corporate and education, and there are multiple pieces going. Can you give us a little bit of background as to how you ended up integrating everything, a little bit about your story?
Of course, coming from information technology background and business operations background into what is and remains a clinical staffing organization, it was phenomenal to see that there isn't a need for people to care more. There isn't a need for clinical excellence. It's there, right? Clinicians are, as you will know, are all type A personalities, are incredibly empathetic, and yet there exist numerous opportunities that were there a decade ago, and they're there today, will likely remain for a long time, for infusion of technology, for efficient processes that make everyone's lives easier. For example, something as trivial as onboarding a new employee in a company, the process of gathering someone's credentials, licenses, and background checks. It could be highly manual, it could be cumbersome for both the company and the clinician, or it could be hopefully much more automated and easier to follow through self-service and automation tools. And you take that and you extrapolate that tenfold into every functional area that, revolves around delivering clinical services. And there exist endless opportunities to do things just a little bit better.
That is so, so true. And I know even when I first started out, there was a lot of pen and paper still involved. And I remember even being in 6th grade, taking typing classes on computers and not typewriters. So I could only imagine the evolution that you've seen. And it's not just within one school district, it's across many school districts, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, districts tend to do things a little bit differently. And that adds a little layer of its own complexity. But at the end of the day, majority of the people who are involved in delivering special education and education in general just want to do the right thing.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that, especially because I've been in the meetings of people truly wanting to see the kids succeed and wanting those processes to be easier. But what's so funny is that for as much as people want it, then when they're presented with new technology, they're, oh my gosh, almost like the sky is falling a little bit. So as the experts that you are, you really have to come in and be like, it's okay. Let's calm down, take a breather. This is a lot easier than you think. Because you guys see it from not just as the teacher, but you see it from the logical clarity of here's all this structure that we really can bring together, which is amazing.
Absolutely. I think that for me, the focus has been and will continue to be in just about everything on customer experience. And customer, to me, is everyone that I interact with, everyone that our organization interacts with, not just the client that the school district may be, but just as much so an internal employee and internal departments. So when you think about the customer experience and the desire and all constant need to make it better, it touches everything. It touches as I mentioned, the onboarding. It touches the ease of time tracking. It touches the ease of payroll and HR. On the client side, it's all about making their lives a little bit easier, because directors of special education are so busy with ever-increasing caseloads, with ever-increasing compliance, with ever-increasing IEPs and the different issues that they have to solve for. For them, worrying about staffing is just something that we're trying to lessen. And even offering tools that streamline their caseload management, even offering tools that help them with budgeting, is often a big win. But going back to the customer experience, and Lenora, to your point specifically, it has to be friendly. It has to be easy to understand and use. Otherwise, it's just another burden. So the experience has to be positive for everyone involved throughout the process.
That is absolutely accurate, but also how you hear the world. So you hear the problems, and then how you think about what technology we have, where we are, and where we can go. It must be really exciting, because I feel like your mind is constantly seeing things from a different lens, which is really, really helpful. Do you find that even as you've progressed, you're noticing things and saying, okay, this is a new place we need to evolve. This is a new thing that we need to look into. This is a new area that we can improve upon?
Yes, with a bit of a caveat, there's always a need to evolve. The tools are getting better and better. I'm not going to even mention that two-letter technology that everyone constantly talks about, and it's always going to be with us, right, in different forms. And it's not just so much the tools, and this is what I always try to remain focused on. It's about the interactive conversation between a user and a technology, a solution and a problem. If we get too far down the line of the technology and, for the academic sake, develop some really, really cool tools, that's all good and well. But if they're not adapted, if they're not properly utilized, what's the point? So it has to come down to, again, the user benefiting from the tools, if we were to talk about the technology. It has to benefit somebody. It has to be, if not a game changer, then certainly an improvement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So even from your perspective and how organizations are currently managing, tracking students and managing absolutely the provider caseload, which has scaled and skyrocketed significantly post-COVID, just with the needs of the kids that were born during the pandemic, their needs are now much, much greater. What are you finding that's helpful, but also where are you finding the friction points of thinking this, we need to work on this, we need to sharpen this?
That's an interesting question. There's a challenge, somewhat of a challenge that we all inherently have with accessing student information when working with districts because of the FERPA regulations. We can't, and we really shouldn't, attempt to extract any student data out of the school's environments and computer systems. So the first challenge, or call it a speed bump, is ability to learn about the caseloads properly and fully. The very interesting and really excited about this upcoming tool that PointQuest will start to offer probably as soon as next 4 to 5 weeks to our existing clients first is called DataDNA. It's been developed by one of our family companies over a number of years, and they've used it with incredible degree of success, but kept it pretty close to the chest. We're going to take it a little bit to a broader audience. And the tool, in the essence of it, does exactly what you referred to. It gathers the information about the caseloads, very, very detailed information about all of the caseloads. How many students, what are the IEPs recommending for them, how many minutes, and so on and so forth. And it creates a highly accurate and predictable staffing model, indicating to the district who's using the DataDNA tool exactly how many types of resources they need to support their caseload. You need 5 SLPs, right? If you're a large district and you have a greater population, you will need this many occupational therapists, physical therapists, school psychologists to doing evaluations, and so forth. And it takes it even a step further where we don't like to talk about, because it's never about the money, but it is important. So the DataDNA will also provide budgetary numbers and anchors for the districts to know before the school year starts exactly what their anticipated budgetary spend for these services will be. And it's highly accurate. So we're very excited about that. Among many other things that are coming online soon, this is one of the things that I am most excited about.
That is wildly exciting, especially because there are so many districts that are being asked to do more with less. So that can really give a better perception of where the needs are, where the spending is, but also what do we even more realistically need to operate and serve our community.
Think about the number of spreadsheets that you and I have probably encountered in our typical service delivery world, right? The spreadsheets that are flying between the districts and directors of special education and providers and multiple companies that are supporting these districts, these spreadsheets that have something to do with the caseload. And they are always a little outdated. They're never 100% accurate. They're never necessarily living in a central repository. There are multiple versions of them, and then somebody forgets that a certain data file or spreadsheet even existed. Take all of that and replace all of the data with a cloud-based repository tool that doesn't just store the data related to your population and their needs, but specifically helps with forecasting the need for different clinicians, and again, gives you that budgetary answer that, of course, everybody wants to know.
Oh, absolutely. And it's always been a guesstimate. So that's very interesting that they're coming out to be even more accurate. And
Yes.
especially with the two-letter word that you mentioned. I like to see it as a tool.
Yes.
Just like if we were going to build a house, you don't need just a saw or you don't need just a hammer. It's a tool to help strengthen everything that goes into building that house. So that's often how I like to think of it. And even adding to that, so among the many things, do you find that you can sometimes become so inundated with information that you're working to try and get a handle on it? How does that work? Because I know, especially with how much information is now available, it's like, okay, well, now what's really important? What do we need? How do we operate?
We do often get bogged down by information and processes and deadlines and what we think is the urgent fire of the day. And it's, I think, up to us as individuals and certainly up to the leaders in special education, in education in general, to, I suppose, not to be overly dramatic, to wake up every day and remind ourselves why we are showing up. And we're not showing up to complete a report. We're not showing up to finish our budget. We're not showing up to say, everything is filled, all the jobs are filled, all the positions are staffed. We're showing up to provide a service for kids that need it the most. And it's not easy to remind oneself every day of that, right? Because we're always inundated with ever-increasing amount of information. So when it's all said and done, I believe it's about developing a self-discipline to keep that information at bay, to not drown, to not become inundated and overwhelmed by it. Speaking from personal experience. Absolutely from personal experience. There are quite often times when I feel that I don't know where to move into, what task to pick up next, and what is the priority, right? And that discipline to step back and ask, what is going to make the most impact today? What affects our students and or our providers who are just as important to us versus what's going to create a prettier presentation? Heaven forbid, I'm not a PowerPoint fan.
I love that you mentioned that because I completely agree. We can get so lost in a to-do list versus recognizing why. What we got up, we're here, what's the mission? And One of the things, and I found this very interesting, and you likely have one for Nyman Associates, but also I wanted to call it Point Quest.
Point Quest.
Point Quest. Okay, just making sure. You know, their business has a mission, and they have their mission and value statement. And one of the coaches that I work with, and I work with many coaches, and I think it's such a beautiful idea and concept, and goes to what you had shared. What is your own personal mission? What is your own personal why? What is your own personal value that you remind yourself each day, like, this is the mission, this is the why, not the PowerPoint. It's about kids getting the help they need, or it's about making things easier for staff who are providing services to kids. And I think that's such a beautiful way that you had shared that. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Really is very impactful. Beautiful golden nugget right there.
I love that you're working with a coach and multiple coaches, right? That's something that I wish, and maybe we can take a moment and promote that to anyone and everyone who is going to listen to, whether it's 2 people or hundreds of people. Personal growth is not a nice to have. It's mandatory. It should be mandatory. Right? Yeah. So that professional development / personal growth, it can never stop. Right? And I think that we owe it to our coworkers. We owe it to our employees. We owe it to our clinical providers, and we owe it to our clients to be constantly getting a little bit better so we could be a bit more valuable for them. That's the value.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that. It's a quick side note. It always boggles my mind how when you're with a child and they say, oh, I want to go out and I want to go for swimming. Like, okay, let's get a swim coach. Or I want to learn piano. Okay, let's get a piano lesson. To even excel in the things, there's something where it happens between as you get into high school and college and you start into the workforce. People don't necessarily start to recognize the importance and the value of coaches and mentors. And there's a breakdown between an entrepreneurial spirit of people, or people who recognize that value versus people who were just like, no, that's just not a thing. It's wild with the breakdown. And I find that there's quite an extreme. So I know that's a sidebar and a totally different conversation for another day, sure. But still very, very interesting to me. When it comes to special education leaders listening right now, I know someone who's managing their IEPs and all these moving pieces and all the deadlines that there are. What's one thing that you would encourage them to rethink about how they're currently managing their system or their process?
I'm not trying to be funny intentionally, but your question of what is the one thing, I'm going to answer with, it's never just one thing.
Oh, okay. That is accurate too, yeah.
I find that often I respond this way to folks these days, to questions who are expecting a yes or no response. And there are multiple responses. There are multiple variables. So it's not so much about what is the one thing or the 3 steps to success or the shortcuts, right? It's more so that something that I learned from one of my coaches many, many decades ago, and I carry it with me. And if she ever hears me say this, I know she will know that those words came from her. And she said to me one day when I was very flustered with a circumstance at work, she said that, Gary, she said, you have to remember one thing. People are generally good. People are not coming to work to make their lives more difficult or to create a nuisance. People are generally good. They're showing up and they're trying to do their best. And that's something that stuck with me. And that is something that I think that is worth reminding each other often, especially toward the end of the school year, when there's a heightened sense of anxiety about getting everything wrapped up, about getting everything lined up for the upcoming school year and worrying about the ESY in between, right? Everyone is fighting the same battle and everyone is trying to help each other to the ability that their circumstances and skills allow. So I think that the other answer is keep an open mind to where solutions may come from, right? It's okay to try new things and explore and ask the question, what does that mean, right? Oftentimes districts, and you would appreciate this, Lenora, will say, well, we're not interested in virtual because we really prefer to have all of our SLPs in person, right? We believe it's more effective. Okay, well, you and I know that there aren't enough of the qualified clinicians nationwide, and they're not going to be for a foreseeable future. So what do we do, and how do we help districts that experience shortages to open up their mind to virtual services or a combination of SLPs and SLPAs, right? Or virtual with so-called e-helpers on site helping students stay involved, right? How do we help the districts that are set in their budgetary constraints see that the market around them has moved on so much faster and that their rate of pay is no longer competitive enough to attract the people that they need to their districts, right? And that's all of this is sort of a progression of the same theme. What else is there? Let's remove the first layer and the second layer and the next layer and see what are the options, what are the opportunities.
I love that you pointed that out. And you're absolutely right. It's more than one thing. And even just there, it's layered. It's so very layered. And it really, especially just from you sharing that, it leads to the insight of how many conversations you've had with practitioners, with teachers, with a staff of all sorts, and how you really see the layers in their life of, yes, it does come down to salary. Yes, it also comes down to mission. Yes, it also comes down to location. There's many, many multiple moving pieces, and you're completely right about that.
You mentioned something very interesting. You mentioned having conversations with practitioners. I share this often, I suppose, because it is a point of pride. I have interviewed over 1,000 SLPs in my career with Nyman Associates, and I do feel very proud of that because I learned so much about the field, about the deliveries, about the challenges, about the opportunities, about what makes a difference for them. And you mentioned, Lenore, how sometimes it's not the pay. It's always a factor, but it's almost never a single factor, right? So it really comes down to, I learned, meeting people where they are, finding out and being very intentional and paying attention to what it is that your candidates and our clinicians are saying. I feel very positive with Point Quest Group's mentality toward that. I feel very positive about the emphasis on supporting our clinicians. I feel that is something that permeates throughout the organization, right? It's not a sort of a conveyor belt, but more of a, what is important for you individually, right? What makes us different? What makes you different? Is it the location? Is it the compensation? Is it the caseload? Is it support? And you know this very well. SLPs they span the whole, broad spectrum of someone needing a lot of support and a lot of framework around them and a lot of guardrails to be comfortable and productive versus someone who is incredibly independent, who wants to be solo, who doesn't need to be checked on every week, right? And it's very important, I found, and I feel that it applies obviously to everybody, not just a speech pathologist, to understand what is it that is important to that individual. If we can make their life a little bit better, they will in turn focus more on their students. What could be better than that?
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned that. And that absolutely, you can tell, is a source of pride for you. And that's a wonderful thing because you see, and I have a feeling that people probably come to you at the end of a school year saying, what you created was so helpful. Thank you so much. Because you can see, not just hear the stories, but you can feel and see the difference that your work made on their life and how much it improved the quality of their life.
Incredibly gratifying. But not more so than when this happened twice in a decade. But it did happen when more seasoned SLPs, more seasoned of our employees at Nyman Associates sent their daughters, it just so happened as the two instances, who just attained their master's degrees in communication disorders to work for the same company they work. That was and remains probably the biggest validation of us trying to do okay by our staff. Yeah. Still happens. It's an older company. Sorry, not an older company, but the Nyman Associates has been founded in 1978. So it's been around for quite a while. And so I suppose it was inevitable. And yet still, it's such a big deal to us. It really means everything.
I think a testament to the core foundation of what was established in 1978, because you're fast forwarding to 2026 and many, unfortunately, did not make it through the late 90s into the 2000s or even in 2010 to 20s. And many didn't make it through the pandemic. So it's phenomenal and very, very something to be very proud of, that not only did you make it through, you also thrived.
We did. It's a collective effort of a very large group of people, like-minded individuals, right? Just have to hire people, I suppose, who care about the right things. And we've been very, very fortunate where the teams in both Nyman Associates and the larger entity, PointQuest Group, the leadership roles today are held by people who care. Seasoned folks who are excellent at their jobs, but above all things, they care. And to me, that's very important, right? I think it's important for everyone, whatever it is that we do, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, to be around people who genuinely care about the subject at hand. That's my litmus test for everyone. Are you a good employee? I don't know. What is that? How do you qualify that? Do you care? Yes. Great.
Oh, I love that. I have one more question for you, and I love all that you shared with us so far. So thank you for that. If we were having this conversation in 5 years, what would you hope to have seen grow and expand with regard to all the work that you do?
I would love to see more programs bringing more clinicians to the field across just about any discipline, right? These shortages that we're experiencing today are so chronic. Anyone who's been around knows that this is not a 2020 thing. It's not a pandemic thing. We haven't had sufficient enough number of speech pathologists for decades. School psychologists, certified school nurses, right? Board certified behavior analysts. It would be amazing if we see more programs coming online, more universities investing in the new programs and attracting more people to the field. It's one thing to have a program, but you have to make it enticing for people to join the program, right? And this is where a lot of us have a collective responsibility to make the field more attractive to newcomers, either by making the compensation better, right? Either by introducing new, more supportive and better career options and career paths for everybody who's coming into the field. It also, I feel, a bit of responsibility on the school districts too, right? They need to do their part in welcoming the new staff, supporting the existing staff, being reflective of how busy everyone is, and giving everyone just a little bit of grace sometimes. And of course, speaking about that, all of us, myself included, have to remind ourselves to give other people a little bit more grace. But in 5 years, I hope we have more people coming into the field above all things, because no artificial intelligence is going to solve that. No technology is ever going to replace that. A human, especially in clinical field, that humanity, I feel, is more important now and will be more important 5 years from now than it is today.
I completely agree with that. Definitely. I love that you also pointed out that it's not just one thing, it's many things that you hope to see in 5 years. I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your very valuable time. Thank you for the golden nuggets that have been a part of this. I am so glad it was recorded because I can go back and get all my notes and all these little taglines. So it was absolutely wonderful spending time with you and speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Lenore. I absolutely appreciate being invited. Your questions are awesome. I am grateful that you do what you do. Please continue. Thank you so much. And until maybe the next time.
Yes, until maybe next time. Thank you so much. We will have all your information in the show notes. And to our listeners, thank you for spending time with us here on the Special Education Insights podcast. And until next time, stay well.